Before we jump into the video, I want to remind you that you will hear 2 stories today, both of which come with new updates. Now, let's get started with the first story. I caught my wife cheating with 2 guys, and I took action to get my revenge. Hello everyone, I'm a 33-year-old man with a story to tell. Before I share my experience, I want you to think about this. What would you do if you found your wife, someone you trusted deeply, making out with 2 other men right on your bed? Let me take you back to when I first met my wife, Tracy, who is 29 years old. Our paths crossed at the movies. I was there with my friends to catch a newly released film, and she was enjoying a night out with her girlfriend group. We hit it off immediately, and that initial spark led to us dating for a year before we decided to get married. What started as a promising friendship evolved into one of the most heartbreaking love stories I could have imagined. In the early days of our marriage, everything felt perfect. Being married to Tracy felt like a true blessing. We shared a lot of happiness during those first 2 years. I worked hard to support her dreams, always trying to encourage her to chase what she wanted in life. Tracy was sweet, supportive, and had a wonderful personality. She was truly everything I had dreamed of in a partner, a great cook, charming, elegant, and most importantly honest. Her truthfulness was something I cherished deeply. At the time, Tracy worked in a fast food restaurant, while I was a graphic designer involved in creating banners, billboards, and a variety of designs for an organization. We both made decent incomes, but I handled most of the expenses at home because Tracy decided to put her money towards pursuing her passion for acting. Before we got married, Tracy shared her dream of becoming an actress with me. She had always wanted to be in the spotlight, but her parents never supported her aspirations. Instead, they insisted she study something more stable in college because they believed acting was not a respectable profession. When Tracy opened up about her dreams and asked if I would be okay with her pursuing acting, I immediately told her yes. I understood the feeling of longing to chase a passion that one could not pursue. I fully supported her signing up for drama clubs, community volunteer roles, and taking on acting gigs to get closer to her dream. We even made plans for her to attend a theater arts academy in the future once we saved enough money. I encouraged her journey for many reasons, but mainly because I saw her natural talent. Despite her occasional drama queen moments, she was incredibly skilled at acting. Before we met, she had taken a few acting courses and watched countless tutorials on YouTube, showcasing her seriousness about the craft. I never wanted to be someone who stood in the way of her dreams. We agreed to hold off on having children until she had the chance to attend the academy. I genuinely believed that, by that time, she would land significant roles in plays or films. I always thought it was my encouragement that kept her motivated to apply for various volunteer roles since I knew how talented she was. When Tracy asked for my support in her acting pursuit, we were still in the early, blissful days of our marriage. We rarely had disagreements during that first year, and she treated me with kindness and love. During that first year of marriage, Tracy applied for numerous volunteer acting roles online but faced constant rejection. There were moments when she grew frustrated with the lack of responses and even considered focusing solely on her new job. However, I continued to encourage her not to give up hope. Fortunately, just a few months after we celebrated our first anniversary, she finally received a positive response for one of her applications. It was for a play, marking a significant turning point in her pursuit of acting. Tracy received a thrilling response to one of her numerous applications. It was for a play, and the producers were searching for a few new actors and actresses to join the cast. When Tracy saw the email, her heart soared with excitement, and I felt a wave of happiness for her. The great news was that the auditions were being held right in our town, which gave her ample time to prepare. When the big day arrived, Tracy successfully passed the auditions and was selected for a role. The joy on her face when she shared the news with me was priceless. Another wonderful aspect of this opportunity was that they would compensate the cast for their time, and I was thrilled for her. Most of the rehearsals would take place on Saturdays and Sundays, fitting perfectly into her schedule. At first, things remained quite normal between us. Our communication was still strong, and we continued to engage in the activities we enjoyed. The primary difference was that our weekends were not spent together as they once were. Tracy was now dedicating her weekends to rehearsals, waking up early to clean the house and prepare meals before heading off to practice, returning late in the evening. While I felt a hint of discomfort about this new arrangement, I chose not to voice my feelings. I didn't want to jeopardize her first official opportunity in the theater world. Besides, the payment she received for her weekend work far exceeded her weekly earnings. As time went on, however, I began to notice a distance growing between us. In an effort to cope, I found myself immersing in video games, spending time with friends, or inviting them over to my home. My friends were those I had known since high school and college, and I valued their opinions. When I confided in them about Tracy's newfound passion for acting and how it consumed much of her time, one friend, Eric, voiced his concerns. He suggested I keep a close eye on Tracy, mentioning that there were rumors of new actresses sleeping with their directors to secure better roles. Although I disregarded his warning, feeling sure of Tracy's integrity and talent, that conversation lingered in my mind. While I relied on my trust in Tracy, I couldn't entirely shake off my friend's comments. Subconsciously, this led to me behaving differently around her. I began asking strange questions that seemed out of place. When Tracy noticed my change in behavior, she expressed her frustration over my probing inquiries and how I was treating her. It forced me to apologize and explain Eric's remarks. Upon hearing this, Tracy laughed, assuring me that she could never cheat on me because of her love for me. She lovingly told me I was the best husband in the world and that only a foolish and ungrateful woman would betray me. Her words brought me a sense of inner peace, reassuring me that she would never hurt me. Little did I realize that she was only doing what she excelled at, acting, and had been unfaithful even before our conversation. In the weeks that followed, Tracy transformed in ways I found difficult to articulate. Our conversations felt strained, almost forced, and the enthusiasm she once radiated when coming home began to fade. Previously, Tracy was so open with me. After each rehearsal, she would come home bursting with stories about what had happened, sharing details about her fellow actors, their personalities, and how they looked. I had never attended any of the rehearsals, but I felt connected to her world through her storytelling. However, that sharing came to a halt. As her withdrawal continued, Tracy became increasingly defensive. Minor comments, or even playful jokes that used to make her laugh now felt like personal attacks. It seemed that every lighthearted comment I made was met with unnecessary offense. Additionally, she began updating her wardrobe, choosing outfits that were more revealing for rehearsal days. I voiced my concerns about her new attire, feeling uneasy about the changes I was witnessing. Despite my worries, it felt like Tracy was slipping further away from me, and the intimacy we once shared was fading fast. I expressed my concerns about her outfit choices more than a few times, but she never seemed to take my words to heart. She insisted that her clothes were in style, straight out of Vogue, claiming I was just stuck in my old ways. As she embraced these new trends, I began to suspect that she was merely trying to keep up with other actresses who always dressed impeccably. I knew she had a competitive spirit when it came to fashion, and the last thing that crossed my mind was that she could be unfaithful. However, my suspicions started to grow when I noticed her changing her hairstyle every single week. She was constantly on her phone, deep in conversation with a man she said was a co-star. One day, she did something that really angered me, and when I confronted her about it, she yelled at me and stormed out. This was unlike her, and in that moment, I understood I had to take some action. Later that evening, I discussed my concerns with friends who had come over. They immediately jumped to the conclusion that Tracy must be cheating on me, given all the signs and shifts in her behavior. Despite the mounting evidence, I found it hard to believe Tracy could betray me. I had made numerous sacrifices to support her career and help her reach this point in her life. I argued with my friends, suggesting that maybe Tracy was just going through a difficult time and was taking her frustrations out on me. They insisted I was being blinded by love and suggested I hire a private investigator to uncover the truth about her possible infidelity. Initially, I was uncomfortable with the idea of someone following her around, but her recent change in attitude compelled me to consider it. The following week, I found a private investigator online and hired him to keep an eye on Tracy for a week. On the third day, something unsettling happened. Tracy didn't come home after her rehearsals. The next day, when she finally returned, she told me she had gone to a club for one of her fellow actresses' birthday parties and opted to stay at a nearby hotel for safety. What struck me as odd was that she hadn't mentioned this birthday party to me at all. I had been calling her phone repeatedly until around 3 a.m. when she finally answered. She explained, amidst loud music in the background, that she hadn't heard my calls, but claimed she had told me about the all-night celebration, insisting that I was simply not paying attention. I felt her story was shaky at best, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I knew the private investigator was following her, and I would soon learn the truth. Days passed without any updates from the investigator, and when I finally heard back from him, I was away visiting my parents. On my way back home, he contacted me, saying he had important information to share. Rather than returning directly home, I decided to meet with him first. Tracy had no idea I was cutting my visit short, as I had told her I would be back on Monday morning for more time with my family. When I met with the investigator, he presented me with evidence that utterly shattered my world. He had clear photos and even videos of Tracy with a man who turned out to be her affair partner. There were images of them kissing in her car, shopping together, dining out, and a video from the night she had claimed to be at a club for her fellow actress's birthday. The footage revealed that she had been with this man all night, leaving the club around 10 p.m. and driving to his apartment, which meant she had seen my calls but chose to ignore them. The realization that Tracy had cheated on me was devastating. I had envisioned a bright future together, but it felt like she had shattered all those dreams. After the investigator showed me the evidence, he informed me that he had followed her that evening as well and that she was currently with her affair partner in my home. At that moment, rage filled me, and I felt the urge to break something. I was too furious to drive myself, so the investigator drove me to my house. As we arrived, I noticed a blue Toyota Venza parked in my driveway. It was the same car from the pictures and videos I had just seen. I instantly knew that Tracy was inside. I instantly recognized that Tracy was in the house with her affair partner. I had been following my instincts, but I can't recall if I had actually agreed to confront the situation. Suddenly, I found myself inside our home. As I pushed open the door to our bedroom, I was faced with a shocking scene. Tracy was in bed with not one, but two men. The tall, blonde guy was on top of her, while the other man was engaged in a humiliating act. My mind was racing, filled with rage. I didn't know who to go after first. Tracy was wearing revealing lingerie, and in an even more humiliating twist, she was cuffed to the bed. When she caught sight of me, she struggled to get up, but her restraints kept her from moving freely. In a blind fury, I lunged at the blonde guy, while the other man scrambled to gather his clothes and disappeared from the room like a thief in the night. Thankfully, my friend had followed me inside and managed to restrain me from doing something I would regret. Amidst all the chaos, Tracy remained trapped, pleading with me. She insisted that I had made a mistake, and claimed she was merely rehearsing for a role in a play with a man. Her ridiculous excuse only fueled my anger further. I couldn't believe she could come up with such a lie in that vulnerable moment. Instead of giving in to my rage, I turned and left the room, telling her to be gone by the time I returned. Once outside, my friend revealed that he had captured the entire scene on video and shared it with me. I was uncertain about what to do with the recording but accepted it nonetheless. That night, I crashed at a friend's house, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over me as I realized he had been right about Tracy and her so-called acting career. The idea of her having a threesome in our own bed was almost too painful to bear. When I returned home the next morning, Tracy was still there, avoiding her rehearsals, fully aware of the gravity of her actions. As soon as I saw her, my anger flared up again. I kicked her out, tossing her belongings onto the lawn while she begged me to reconsider. She kept insisting that I was making a mistake and urged me to allow her to explain what had really happened. For nearly an hour, she shouted my name, pleading to be let back in. But as time passed, her tone shifted from desperate to abusive, hurling insults at me before finally leaving. This incident occurred just last week, and I hesitated to share it until now because I have not been myself since that day. I am baffled at how everything unfolded right under my nose. I wasn't overly protective of Tracy or anything like that. We split the bills, and she handled most of the household chores. I always tried to keep my emotions in check around her, and I highlight this because I've seen stories where men overlook the warning signs. Looking back, I should have started to investigate the moment our communication began to falter, and when she suddenly started enhancing her wardrobe. But is that how marriage is supposed to feel? Should I suspect my spouse anytime they buy new clothes or distance themselves from me, claiming to be exhausted after work? It doesn't seem right. To make matters worse, Tracy has been relentlessly calling my phone since I kicked her out. I have been plotting my revenge, and I'm considering showing the video to her director. Update 1. I appreciate the comments and support I have received. It seems that many agree my reaction wasn't too extreme. Coincidentally, I conducted a bit of research on the second man in the video and discovered some shocking information. He identifies as bisexual and is currently involved with Tracy's director, who is homosexual. I can only imagine the sense of betrayal and anger the director will feel when he learns that Tracy seduced his boyfriend. As for Tracy, she came to my place 3 days ago, looking utterly dejected with swollen eyelids, a clear sign of her recent crying. Unfortunately for her, my friends were over when she arrived, and although they didn't say anything, their presence and body language spoke volumes. Tracy became visibly upset seeing me with my friends, prompting her to lash out at me. "So this is it, Mike? You let your friends disrespect your wife over a little disagreement between us?" While she stood on the porch pleading for me to let her in, I remained silent inside, listening to her desperate cries. I was inside my house, listening to her speak when she boldly made a statement that caught me completely off guard. In that moment, my emotions surged, and I felt a rush of anger that compelled me to charge out of the house to confront her. I was determined to give her a piece of my mind, to make her truly understand the impact of her words. It was as if I was ready to face any consequence, even arrest for assault, just to be heard. I wanted her to know how deeply her words affected me before she left my home that day. She began to make a scene, reminding me of all the promises we had exchanged over the years. She talked about how we had vowed to grow old together, which only fueled my anger further. Even though I was boiling with rage, I found myself unable to act on my feelings. I knew that if I let my emotions take control, it would only escalate the situation. After what felt like an eternity of silence between us, she pressed me for a response regarding the art academy that I had promised to support her with. My instinct was to tell her to seek support from her affair partner, but instead, I bit my tongue and chose silence, wanting her to stop talking and leave as soon as possible. Eventually, she left, and I could see the shame on her face. It was a small victory for me, but I knew it wasn't the end. I had already reached out to a divorce lawyer, and the process was set in motion. Once the papers were ready, he would send them over for her to sign. As for my plans for revenge, I took the advice given to me by friends. I understood that sharing the video of her cheating with her director might not completely ruin her career, but it certainly had the potential to derail everything she had worked hard for over the months. Knowing that Tracy had cheated on me with her director's boyfriend only added to my determination. The thought of exposing her infidelity excited me, and I was resolved to see it through. I promised myself I would provide an update soon. Update 2. The situation became even more complex for Tracy than I initially anticipated. After posting my last update, I spent 2 weeks searching for her director online. Eventually, I managed to find him. He was new to the film industry, and was just beginning to make a name for himself. We arranged to meet, and I sensed his eagerness as I told him I had important information regarding his partner and one of the actors in his production. When we met, I wasted no time. We exchanged casual pleasantries, but I quickly showed him the video of his boyfriend and Tracy. The disappointment and heartbreak were evident on his face as he watched. He actually cried. He admitted to me that he had suspected his boyfriend of being involved with someone else from the cast but had no solid proof. He also revealed that his boyfriend had cheated on him before, a situation he had forgiven, believing it happened while under the influence of alcohol. At that moment, I wasn't particularly interested in the details of their past. I was more focused on the potential fallout for Tracy. I asked the director what he planned to do about her and the affair. He confessed he hadn't yet considered his options. I urged him not to let Tracy and her partner escape without consequences, especially after what they had done to him. To make a long story short, Tracy's director ended up firing both her and her blonde affair partner. I was left wondering if he decided to break up with his boyfriend after that revelation. Seeing Tracy get fired was satisfying. It felt like all her hard work had been reduced to nothing. I wanted her to experience the pain of having devoted herself completely to something, only to have it destroyed by her own actions. By the time Tracy was let go, my divorce papers were finalized, and my lawyer sent them to her that same day. The moment she received them, she called me, pleading for me not to ruin everything we had built together. I reminded her that she had shattered it the day she started entertaining thoughts of cheating. When I revealed that I was the one who had shown the video to her director, I could practically hear her flipping out on the other end of the line. She accused me of being jealous of her accomplishments, and resented her for pursuing her passion while I couldn't. I found her attempts to twist the narrative amusing, and I simply hung up the phone. 2 weeks ago, she signed the divorce papers, and as I write this update, I acknowledge that while it hurts, I am relieved to finally have her out of my life. I appreciate all the support I've received from everyone. Now, on to the next chapter of my life. Story 2. I, a 36-year-old man, recently discovered that my wife, who is 34, has been cheating on me. At this point, I find myself unsure of what steps to take next. Let me provide some background on my relationship. My wife and I have been together for nearly 17 years, and during that time, we have built a life together with 3 children. Over the last 2 years, we've been working on restoring our old house, a project that has consumed a lot of our time and energy. However, our financial situation has not been ideal. We have limited savings and are struggling with significant debt. When we first met, we were relatively inexperienced in relationships. I had never been with anyone else, and before me, my wife had a few brief encounters. She has always been a beacon of light in my life. We have faced numerous challenges together, and through thick and thin, we have leaned on each other for support. I had believed that we were one of the few couples who could weather life's storms and stay strong together. However, it appears I was mistaken. As we focused on fixing our home and balancing full-time jobs with the needs of our children, we started to lose sight of ourselves and each other. Our financial struggles and health-related issues only added to the strain. My wife has been trying to lose weight for quite some time, but despite her efforts, she wasn't seeing the results she wanted. This situation took a toll on her self-esteem, leaving her feeling low and frustrated. We both fell into a state of depression, but instead of addressing our feelings and supporting one another, we each suffered in silence. I immersed myself in computer games to escape from our problems, while she often turned to her phone for distraction. As spring turned into summer, the situation worsened. My wife began to spend more time with her friends and went out partying, while I stayed at home with the children. I thought giving her the freedom to unwind would lift her spirits, but this approach didn't lead to the positive changes I had hoped for. Deep down, I started to feel uneasy. My intuition was telling me something was wrong. I had heard whispers that my wife had been seen kissing another man at a dance in a nearby town. When I brought it up, she denied it, claiming that a guy had attempted to kiss her, but she had turned him down. I wanted to believe her, so I tried to dismiss my growing concerns, wanting her to feel my trust. As summer progressed, her behavior shifted further. She became increasingly secretive about her phone, leaving me feeling uneasy. One night in August, I noticed her Facebook password and decided to take a look. What I discovered was far worse than I had feared. It turned out she had indeed kissed someone while under the influence, and this was only the tip of the iceberg. Upon accessing her Messenger and Skype accounts, I found that she had been communicating online with two foreign men. One man, whom I'll refer to as Guy A, had reached out to her on Instagram with flattering messages, and their conversations quickly moved to Skype. Within less than 2 weeks of chatting, she had begun sharing nude photographs with him. The kiss incident happened not long after this started. This online interaction with Guy A continued until mid-August, when his true colors were revealed. He was a scammer using a stolen account, sending her fake images while she shared intimate pictures of herself. By then, she was already talking to Guy B, another man she had met on Instagram. Just like with Guy A, their conversations escalated to nude images and sexual talks. Both men expressed fantasies about visiting our country and meeting her in a hotel. Throughout these exchanges, she spoke about me only when necessary, mentioning that I treated her well but primarily focused on how much she enjoyed the attention from them. The situation took an even darker turn when I discovered some unsettling chat messages between her and a female friend. They had attended a 2-day town festival together in early July, which I had thought was acceptable. I was aware that my wife's friend, who struggles with panic attacks, had to spend the night at a local hospital, but what I uncovered in their conversation was shocking. My wife mentioned spending time with a 41-year-old man during that trip, an ordeal that stirred up a whirlpool of emotions within me. The depth of her betrayal seemed to grow with each revelation, and what was once a happy life was crumbling before my eyes. What I discovered in the chat between my wife and her friend revealed a troubling situation. It turned out that she had mentioned a 41-year-old man from our small town, a married guy with kids who was feeling unhappy in his relationship. She had met him that night when he came over to chat, and he attempted to take things further physically. However, my wife told her friend that she had stopped him. Although she didn't mention his name directly, it was easy for me to piece together who this person might be since our town is small and relationships are intertwined. To confirm my suspicions, I checked my online phone records and found that my wife had sent a message to a number that belonged to a man who fit the description. This discovery left me fearful and anxious about the implications. I decided not to confront my wife right away about what I had found. I wanted to avoid a confrontation while the kids were around, so I put on a brave face and waited for the right moment. That moment arrived on Saturday, August 24th. I called my mother to take care of the children, allowing me to have a serious conversation with my wife without interruptions. My wife was busy taking classes to advance her career, and when she returned home from class, I calmly asked her to sit down with me. I started sharing what I knew, choosing to approach the situation without anger, yelling, or insults. We were just two sad individuals, one feeling betrayed and hurt, the other feeling trapped in a web of deception. We spent the entire night talking. She assured me that nothing had actually happened between her and the other man, claiming that her actions online were merely attempts to regain her self-esteem because she felt I had stopped loving her. She didn't lash out at me for looking into her phone, nor did she try to shift the blame onto me. Instead, she explained her perspective, saying that she thought I was unhappy with her because she hadn't lost weight. When other men began showering her with compliments, she became addicted to the validation and attention. She tried to assure me that she never intended to hurt me and that her actions were selfish, driven by a desire to please those who were complimenting her. Though she admitted she had crossed the line, she initially struggled to see the extent of her betrayal. I wanted to believe her, and as the weeks passed, we made an effort to repair our marriage. We decided to seek counseling, and things began to seem more hopeful. My wife became more affectionate and caring, our physical relationship improved, and we spent more quality time together. Yet, despite these positive changes, there lingered an uneasy feeling in my gut that she was still hiding something significant from me. During our second counseling session the following week, my anxieties were confirmed when she finally admitted what I had feared all along. She confessed that she had indeed slept with the other man that night in July. While she expressed feelings of shame and guilt afterward, she continued to engage with him through social media. She disclosed that they had met twice after that encounter, sharing nothing more than kisses. Even after I confronted her in August, she had attempted to reach out to him again. My initial reaction to her admission was one of shock. I didn't scream or resort to violence. I simply froze in place. Part of me felt relieved that she was finally honest about what I had suspected, but I was also overwhelmed with humiliation and deep emotional pain. I was reluctant to make any hasty decisions, so I held off on throwing away my wedding ring or confronting the other man. I didn't want to be the one to expose him to his wife or risk getting into trouble for acting out of anger. After all, it wasn't him who had broken the vows we took. That responsibility lay with my wife. Now, everything feels uncertain. The woman I thought I knew would never have acted this way. She has tried to convince me that she was foolish and selfish, expressing deep regret for the pain she caused. She claims she is ready to do whatever it takes to mend our relationship and to regain my trust and affection. Despite the love I still feel for her and the joy I find in her company, a deep sting remains in my heart. I want this relationship to work, mainly for the sake of our children and due to our difficult financial situation, as divorce is not a feasible option for us at this time. Yet I fear that in trying to keep our family intact, I might lose myself in the process. The fear of losing my own identity and self-respect is overwhelming as I consider the possibility of moving forward after everything that has happened. It's unimaginable to forgive her not just for cheating with one person but with multiple men, specifically 3, and even 4 if I include the incident where she kissed a stranger. This situation goes beyond a simple, impulsive mistake made during a night of partying. She was involved in emotional and physical relationships with these 3 men for over 2 months. Even if 2 of those connections were online, she had intentions to meet them in person, fully aware of what that would mean for our marriage. I can't help but wonder if anyone else has faced a similar betrayal and what advice they might have to offer. It's easy for people to suggest that I should just divorce her and move on, but the reality is much more complicated. I still have feelings for her, and the thought of what this means for our children and our families weighs heavily on my mind. There's also the looming fear that if I pursue a divorce, she might harm herself or struggle with her mental health, which could negatively impact our kids. On top of that, we have an unfinished house and no savings. We need to complete the repairs to make it saleable, which adds another layer of stress to the situation. However, after receiving numerous supportive comments and speaking with my closest friends, I started to gain a renewed belief in myself. I realized deep down that I had been holding on to the belief that there was no way I could ever overcome the pain inflicted by my wife's infidelity. Last Thursday, I made the decision to confront her and communicate my desire to end our marriage. She seemed to anticipate my decision, as her reaction wasn't one of surprise. There was no attempt to persuade me to change my mind. Instead, she fell into a pattern of crying and distress, even calling in sick to work. Since then, we have begun to inform our closest friends and family about the impending divorce, but she has been noticeably reluctant to disclose the full truth of her actions to her parents. My mother is fully aware of what has happened, but for reasons I cannot entirely explain, I agreed not to tell my in-laws just yet. Perhaps I fear that revealing everything might ignite tension and hostility between my soon-to-be ex-wife and me, complicating the divorce process further. When we met with her parents last Sunday, We shared the news of the divorce but skirted around the details of her affairs. Instead, we explained that we had some irreconcilable differences. It felt disingenuous to say that, especially knowing how disappointed they looked. They have been a part of my life for nearly 17 years, supporting us both emotionally and financially, and they adore spending time with our children. It pains me to have to deceive them, but I worry that if I reveal the truth, it could lead to greater animosity from my wife, further complicating matters. However, my patience isn't endless. If she doesn't come clean soon, I will have to share the truth with her parents. I want to avoid the real reasons for our divorce becoming public knowledge, especially in our small community. The last thing I want is for my children to face bullying or ridicule because of what happened. I would prefer if the truth remained among our trusted friends and family while we present a more diplomatic explanation about growing apart and wanting different things in life. I also struggle with the idea of being labeled as the man whose wife betrayed him. There are many practical matters to address as well. We need to sell our house and find new places to live. I expect that custody will be shared, with the children spending alternating weeks with each of us. I feel strongly that their legal address should be with me, so I won't have to pay child support, as that would feel unjust after everything that transpired. Navigating this situation is daunting, and I'm uncertain about how it will ultimately unfold. Historically, it seems that mothers in my country often come out on top in custody battles, as people typically feel sympathy for them. Regardless, I am determined to fight for my kids and ensure that their well-being is prioritized during this challenging time.